looking at the Janome 7034D 4-thread serger. On this video, we're going to tackle starting and stopping and turning corners. So first up, we have our machine threaded. I have it threaded with 4 separate colors, just so we can see which each part of the machine is doing while we're sewing. So I'm going to zoom us in a little bit closer. I have everything set up here to start stitching. And I have a scrap piece of fabric that I've been practicing on. To start and stop, you want to make sure your fabric is in front of the knife so it can cut it off. And I'm just going to raise the pedal a little bit, the foot pedal, or the presser foot, sorry. And then I'm going to start stitching. As I'm stitching, the excess is being cut off. I'm going to stitch through and off the end, and then there is a little. Now I want to show you what the initial stitch looks like. If you see in here, we have some loops slightly over the edge, and then when I fold it over, it's a little bit messy. This tells me that my loopers are a little too loose. So what I'm going to do to fix that is tighten up the tension on my loopers. So right now I have them both set at 2. I'm going to increase it to 4, and this should tighten it up. And then we're going to go back here and stitch again. Let's take a look at that. That is definitely a lot better. Let's see if we can zoom in. It's not as messy on the back, but I think we could go a little bit tighter. So I'm going to increase my tension once again. I'm going to crank it up to 5 and try one more time. Let's see how this went. That's a lot better. What you're looking for is for those loops to lay right on the top edge of the fabric. And that's how you know you have your tension right for your loopers. For your needle tension, you can tell by how much of the stitch is pulled through. You can see there's a little bit there. I probably could tighten up the needle tension just a little bit too. So I will increase that just to see if that makes a difference. One last try. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to leave it with that. Okay, so when you're serging, you saw that I just started and stopped. But now what happens if you have a corner to turn? So first up, let's tackle just like a right angle normal corner. So I'm going to start by, I have a square here. You can't really see it all. I have a square, and I'm just going to tackle starting at one edge and going to the next. Okay, so I have that, and I have this little tail. To start the next one, I always like to keep my tail off to the right, put it under the presser foot, close up to the knife, and I'm going to cut that off. And as it sews over that corner, it's going to seal that corner in. So the threads on this side are not going to come unraveled. and then we have 2 edges. So I would continue that going all the way around, but then you have to deal with the tails that are left over. So there's a couple different ways, and it depends on the project you're doing, what you could do with this. Some people like to cut them right there and then use a fray check or fabric glue and just put a couple dots on there, and that will hold it in. What I tend to do is I like to weave the ends back in quickly with just a nice big needle. So what I tend to do is I grab one of the loops. So I'm going to grab the green loop and I pull it out, and it usually comes quite easily. And then I have 4 threads like this. So then I tie a knot in the threads, just like that. And then I have nice long tails. And then all I do is, because they're kind of long, is I'm going to give them a little snip because I don't need to put them all in, is turn it to the back, and I'm going to weave my needle into the back threads. I always tend to go into the bottom ones just because they're a little bit tighter. So right in there. And then I thread. It's nice if you use a needle with a nice big eye. Thread the threads through like that, and then pull through. Just like that. Straighten it out. So now they're secured under there, and then I just cut off the excess. And then you have a secured corner. And it's a really nice finished edge. So if you ever need to turn corners, that's the easiest way to do it, is just sew off the end and then deal with the leftover tails afterwards. Another thing that you might want to do instead of dealing with 4 corners is kind of just sew a little bit of a curve, and then you'll only have to deal with the corners at the beginning and the end. Well, only have to deal with the tail where you cross over at the end. You won't have corners to deal with. So to show you how to do that, I'm going to get in closer. So when I'm doing this, I'm going to start not at a corner. I'm going to start in the middle of one side. And then while I'm sewing, while I'm serging down one side, when I get to here, I'm going to start to pivot. So I do this by holding my fabric down a little bit tighter and guiding this other corner of fabric around. So it's like a really smooth motion. Until you get the hang of it, it's often a great idea to kind of draw your curve on here so you know exactly where you're going. And then once you get used to the motion, it gets a little bit easier. But here, we'll zoom in and I'll show you what I mean. So to start partway down your fabric, you're going to lift the presser foot. You're going to put your fabric in, and you're going to cozy it up next to the knife. And then I like to put my needles down before I put my presser foot down. So I'm going to start to sew, and when I get to about here, you're going to see me start to pivot my fabric around. And I'm going to pivot and turn, and it's just a smooth motion. And it's a nice curve over here. So another part of that I like to do is you have to try to remember not to push down so much that it slows down. So I find that it is a lot easier if I add some speed to it. So let's go again. And that one wasn't quite as nice as my last one, but it's not as bunched in here because I took it a little bit faster, but I kind of hesitated going into the curve. Okay, I'm going to finish it off, and when I get to about here, I'm going to stop and show you a couple different options for finishing off this. Okay, now let's zoom right in. We have a couple options but the main thing that you need to pay attention to is as you're sewing, serging along here, the knife will easily take the top off of these stitches. So to avoid that, you kind of want to, as soon as it gets to the knife, start to shift it over to the left a little bit and away from the knife. The other thing is, it depends on how you want it to look. If it's not a finished edge that you're going to see, it's quite easy to allow the knife to cut this off and then just slowly taper off the side of the fabric. And that's going to seal in these stitches as long as you don't cut them with the knife here. The other way that I like to do it is as soon as I get here, I move it over just a fraction and then I continue sewing for a couple stitches and then I stop, I lift the foot pedal and then I serge, but I pull it off to the side. So it's not going to be serging on the fabric anymore. So that's the more complicated method. So let's show that one up close. Can I get you any closer? Okay. So I'm going to keep serging. And I have my tail off to the right so that the knife can cut it off. So now it's cut off and I'm going to move my fabric over just a fraction to the left. And then I can see in here when it starts to stitch over my previous stitches. So I'm going to let it sew over a couple. And then I'm going to lift my presser foot and I'm going to serge and pull it off to the left. And now we have, let me show you, a finished where I've sealed in the first ones. And then I can take this, here's my trusty needle, I can grab a loop, pull it through, and clean this up a little bit, and then tie it and weave it in underneath. And that will be a nice finished join. So that is how you go around. You can do this if you're serging the edge of a pocket or something. You can just serge the corner, and then usually there's like an end and beginning, and then you won't have to weave in any ends. So a great application for using a turn like this for a quick and easy project is cloths. So let me zoom. I've made these hemp cloths. And they're a great hostess gift. They're a great baby shower gift. Whatever festivities is going on, these are great. You can make them out of anything. This is a hemp terry, but you could even use a white towel or any other toweling kind of absorbent product. These are great for washing dishes, bath time. A lot of people use them for their face. All different things, but simply you cut a square of fabric and then you pick a coordinating color. This one's a nice peachy color, and then you serge all around the sides, finish it off, tuck the tail in, and you have a beautiful handmade gift. So that is how to turn corners, how to serge, and how to adjust your tension so you make sure that you're getting the best serge that you can for your fabric. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day. A rolled hem is just where the edge of the fabric is rolled under and then held down so that you get a nice clean edge. It makes a tiny, tiny hem. This is done in 3 different colors just so we can see what part of the machine, what part of the serge is making this hem. But typically you would use a matching or contrasting thread that goes with your project. You can use the rolled hem for a lot of different applications. A lot of times you'll see dinner napkins used with a rolled hem. Veils, the edging on veils sometimes are rolled. I have some chiffon to show you today how it works with chiffon, and just some normal cotton like this so you can see how you can use it. I've most recently hemmed a skirt using a rolled hem because it's quick and easy and looks really pretty. There are a couple different settings that we need to change on the Janome 7034D to accomplish a rolled hem. They're outlined in the user manual, but we'll go over them here just in case you need a visual on how to change them. Let's start over at the far end. Our top dial needs to be turned to R. We can leave this dial at 1, or if you've changed it, this is your differential feed, you need to change it back to 1. On the front of the machine, we need to adjust the tension. We're going to adjust the upper looper to 3, and we're going to adjust the lower looper to 7. The lower looper, you're increasing the tension so it will roll the fabric underneath. So if you're not getting as deep or too deep of a rolled hem, you can adjust this dial accordingly. One of the biggest things that you need to change is your needle. We are only going to use 3 threads, so we're going to remove our left hand needle. So you're going to, it's labeled here, loosen the screw and slide out the needle and set it aside. I like to just give this screw a couple turns to the right just to make sure that it is not going to fall out while you're serging. The next part you're going to have to change is this pink switch from our straight stitch or serge stitch to our rolled hem indicator. To do this, we're going to open both front panels of our serger. And this knob here, we're going to depress. Gets a little stuck, and then shift it to the R and release it back into place. Now we are ready to serge and make our rolled hem. So first let's start with some chiffon. We're leaving our knife engaged so that it can trim off the edge as it rolls it. So just like before, I like to raise the presser foot, lower it back down so it has the chiffon under it, and then slowly start serging. You'll notice as you're serging with a rolled hem that it's a little bit slower. And there we've made a nice rolled hem on our chiffon. We can also I'll show you on a piece of cotton so that you can see how it looks as well. It works just the same. I raise the presser foot, put a little bit under, and then we've created a rolled hem. To go back to serging, you simply undo all the steps that we did and put your machine back into the previous settings. One great way that I often do this is I take a picture of my settings before I change anything over. And this allows me to quickly and easily change everything back to the way it was before. I hope that you have some fun with the rolled hem. It definitely is a very professional look and easy and quick to do. Thank you. And today we're going to look at how to use our serger to gather. Over here you can see in the background a nice little project that I made. It's a pettiskirt for my daughter when she was little. And I used my serger to gather all the ruffles in it because it gives it a nice full touch to it. There are a lot of projects out there that you can use your serger for ruffling. And I just wanted to show you how to set up your machine to do it. It's really quick and easy, and some of the different kinds of results that you will get. So I have the machine all set up with my 4 threads. I'm using 4 different colors so you can see which thread is doing what while we're serging today. I have it set up to do a typical serge, just a normal serge, and there's only one real adjustment that we're going to make, and that is over on the end. The 7034D is a differential feed serger, and so what that means is that we have 2 different sets of feed dogs on our machine. This dial here will help us control the feed dogs at the front. The feed dogs at the back always move at the same speed, but we can adjust how quickly the front feed dogs move the fabric to create different effects. This is also what you would adjust when your fabric isn't lying flat when you serge a seam. That often means that the fabric isn't being fed in at an even rate that it's being pulled out. So for this case, we're going to dial up the notch all the way to 2.2. So it's 2 and 2.2. So it's the dot past the 2. What that changes is these feed dogs here. These feed dogs now are going to move quicker than the feed dogs at the back. There's another set just further behind the foot that always move at the same rate. So how this adjusts gives you gathers really depends on the type of fabric you're using. So I have today 3 different types of fabric so you can see how your gathering will look when you use it. So I'm going to start out with quilter's cotton first, and I'm going to put it a little bit under the presser foot, put it down, and start to serge. And then we have slightly gathered fabric here. So it's definitely, if you look at this edge, this is nice and flat, and this edge has gathered. And if you gave that a press, you would have more defined gathers. So it gives you a nice, a little amount of fullness in the fabric. You could use this for a skirt that needs a slight gather in it. Next up, let's try a knit fabric. So this is just a jersey knit. And once I find the starting point, we'll start it up. Jersey I love using my serger for all my knit projects. Kind of lost my end there, but that's okay. So with the jersey, it definitely gives it a little bit more of a gather than the cotton fabric, the cotton woven fabric. You can see it's got some waves in there for you. All right, and last, I'm going to show you with a chiffon. The chiffon is really just a delicate nylon fabric. And it gives you a way more pronounced ruffle. So when you are using your serger to gather, keep in mind what kind of fabrics you're going to use. I would definitely suggest anything where you want a nice tulle or chiffon that has a really nice gather in it. The serger is the way to go. Your jersey knits are going to give you a delicate gather, and the woven cotton, this is a quilter's cotton, is just going to give you a little bit more of a fullness, which is often something that you want in a more fitted skirt, just a little bit of extra room. I hope that helps you understand how to use your gathering, your differential feed rather, to gather on your serger. Thanks. Pintucks are just simple little folded pieces of fabric that you create using your serger. And these are often used for decoration and adding interest to a piece. You'll often see pintucks like this on blouses and shirts, but I'm seeing it more and more on pillows and quilting. It really just adds a lot of interest, and it really depends on which way you complete the fold. And then also at the end, what I could have done here is stitched some folds in one direction and other folds in another direction, and you get a really interesting visual piece. So let's look at our machine and what we need to change our settings to. First off, we're going to look at the front of the machine, and our attention is all in what you would normally serge with. So I have my top thread at 4 and my loopers at 3-ish. We are only using one needle. Today we're going to use the right needle, so I've removed the left hand needle. On the side of our machine, we have switched the dial to the R position, and we have our differential feed at 1. Opening up the machine, you will see two things different than normal. Usually our pink switch is up at the serge or the stitching part. Opening up our machine, you will see that we have a couple things different right now. Typically, we have our pink switch at the S, and now we're going to have it at the R. Remember, to do that, you simply press this in and slide the switch forward. And to undo it, you do that in reverse. You push this in, and then you push this up to the S. We've also disengaged, We've also disengaged our knife, and that you press in this knob here and to swing it back up. For our pintucks, we don't want our knife to be cutting the edge of our fabric. So to do our pintucks, the first thing you need to do is take your fabric and give it a good press along where you want your first pintuck. And then when you come in here, you'll see that there is a guideline right here, right in here. And that's where you want to place the edge of your fabric. So I'm going to raise the presser foot, and I'm going to feed the fabric in until the needle is over top of it, and start with the needle in. Lower your presser foot and stitch. And the whole time you want to keep your edge right along that groove line. And then you open it up, and that's your pintuck. And then you can give that a good press down. And then you can move on to the next tuck that you want to make and create it there. And if you measure them all out beforehand, then you'll have nice, evenly spaced pintucks. I hope that helps. And at the end, when you want to switch back to serging, put them back to your serger settings. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.